Welcome to the RSP Boiler Room. I'm Matt Waldman with the Rookie Scouting Portfolio. Today, I want to give you some insight into how I look at quarterback play. And we're going to look at Deshaun Watson here. And it's the toughest position to evaluate in football. And one of the reasons is you have to look at a lot of different technical things about the position, as well as conceptual decision making, as well as athleticism and leadership and temperament. And there's so much to integrate into what makes a good quarterback that it's easy to not find that balance in your evaluation between looking at the details and then getting lost in the details. A good example of that on the positive side in my past experience is being able to see above some of the details with Russell Wilson and also seeing the right details with him. An area where I've gotten lost in details and maybe have wondered if my ability to see the integrated whole of a player and it didn't quite work out so well is Dak Prescott. Those are two good examples on either side of the spectrum where if you get the balance right, you can see things that maybe the consensus aren't. And if you don't, you might miss things that everyone else is missing as well. Watson could be that kind of player. And we're going to watch this play. That it's going to be a lot about decision making, but we're also going to look a little bit about mechanics. And it's just to give you an idea of how I go through this process. Usually first, I look at the play in real time. See, it's a near interception on this play. Now, before I look at this play, oftentimes what I do is I look at the situation on the field. That's really the first thing that I do. And the first thing I look at is the formation. You have a 2-by-2 formation. You have it closer onto the right side in terms of where they are to the line. And then I look at the coverage. First thing I look at is the safeties. You have two high safeties, and where are they located? They're each located outside shade of these slot receivers, which means that outside shade usually means that they are playing a form of man coverage. They have man responsibility over these guys deep if they go deep. So I know that right away. Then I'm looking at the outside cornerbacks, and you have one playing inside shade and one playing outside shade. The inside shade is 2 yards off. He's probably going to have man responsibility on this wide receiver all the way through. This outside corner with this shade, he's playing off, which means that he probably has a zone responsibility in this flat. So knowing this, I already kind of have a feel for how this coverage is going to be assigned to these receivers, short to long. Deep on these slot men, deep on this outside guy, and this guy probably has a dual responsibility to play deep either, in this quadrant of the field, whereas this linebacker playing inside shade probably has the short responsibility, depending on how these routes break. So let's watch how these routes break. First, let's slow it down a little bit. I like to go really slow with this, but it'll give you kind of an idea why. First, watch the receivers on this right side. And the reason I say that is right after the snap, I look to see where the quarterback is. The quarterback is looking up this right hash. That tells me that most likely he's either looking off this player and going to go to the opposite side, or he's going to go somewhere to this side of the field. So looking at how the routes are unfolding at this bottom right, you can see that the cornerback is sitting down in this shallow zone. The linebacker is playing this inside part of the zone, and that safety on the right is indeed covering the slot receiver man on man deeper down the field. So the outside receiver is working the crossing route. This crossing route looks like it should break open here if Deshaun Watson wants it. He's looking further downfield, and we can see this basically by his throw more than anything else. And looking at we'll look at his throw mechanics in a minute here. But what he is looking at with this throw before he makes it is the deep safety here. Oops, a little too far. Is the deep safety here, and he's not paying attention to this corner who has no underneath coverage responsibility. If you look, he's coming off and working back towards the slot man and then just lets him go. This should be a key right here, that he's free to roam the field a little bit. It's not something that Watson notices by this off coverage pre-snap. The off coverage pre-snap should show him that this off outside shade means zone, and if he knows that he's got his receiver breaking across on a crossing route, there's no responsibility underneath for him to account for. And that means that any throw in this range of the field is probably not a good idea, because he's got over-under coverage that he's going to be trying to fit the ball into. But he's not making that read. And as a result, the cornerback's able to defend this play and nearly pick off the pass. This should have been an interception if you really look at it. So the first thing that I'm going to notice with Deshaun Watson in terms of decision making is I have to wonder about how good he is pre-snap at reading coverage. Now, this doesn't mean that he's bad at it consistently. I have a lot more to watch of Watson, but it's the type of thing that I'm going to be taking note of, is that he missed this coverage tell pre-snap with the safety and cornerback, and he had this safety or this linebacker or nickel corner playing a responsibility that was going to have this slot receiver break open. And these are things that he should have seen pre-snap. And as you can see, as he throws the ball, this is open. If he just throws it and leads it here, this receiver is going to at least make the catch. It might be a short gain. But throwing into the thick of that zone coverage wasn't a great idea. Now let's take a look at his actual release, the mechanics of his release some, because we've already seen at least one small aspect of his decision making. Let's see how he looks just throwing the ball. He's got a nice little crossover step here on a short 3-step drop from gun. This is a rhythm throw that he should be making here. And where his feet are set, they're about shoulder width, maybe a little wider than they need to be. And I've noticed that on the first throw I saw, that he was a little bit on the wide side throwing the ball. But it's not a huge issue right now. I like that he's usually on the ball, on his toes or the balls of his feet in terms of balance. And then delivering the ball. He doesn't bring the arm down too far. It's efficient in terms of the ball not going too far on a wide arc. Now he does bring the ball back a little bit wide to begin this. It's a little far from his head, but not so much so. It's not an egregious technical issue with his mechanics. And he gets good zip on the ball, and it's good placement if he had read the coverage and the coverage wasn't there the way it is. It's good placement to the receiver in terms of just base accuracy. It's just not a great read of everything else. So, this is how I look at plays. This is, when you're looking at quarterbacks, reading the defense, what does inside shade mean over a receiver, and what does that usually tell pre-snap? What does the coverage of the cornerbacks usually tell? And then how they react within your drop phase of the post-snap. within these steps, as he's looking downfield, he should be reading whether any of this changes. For instance, here you see the safety during this post snap drop to the outside. So instead of covering this receiver on the outside necessarily, he's still staying in between both and trying to account for this receiver on the outside as well. So that changes maybe how you would have looked at this side of the field if you were going to choose that side. But he's not choosing that side, he's choosing the right. So we should have seen that safety in that corner. These are things that he'll have to work on. They're things that he's going to have better recognition with. And, this is fourth, fifth game of the season. We'll see more of his tape and see if he's done a better job of reading zone coverage pre-post snap. And if he hasn't, then it's something that he's going to have to work on from the conceptual side of his game. So a lot more to watch at Deshaun Watson, but I thought I wanted to give you an idea of how I look at quarterback play and understand too that successful quarterbacks oftentimes doesn't mean that they have to be perfect in the conceptual side or the mechanical side or the physical side of the game. If they have enough strengths in two of those three areas, oftentimes they can be successful as starters with the right fit in a system. And that's also a big key. So you can see a lot of things to consider here, even just from looking at one play. Thanks again for watching. For more RSP Boiler Room videos, you can check out my YouTube channel at the RSP Film Room, or check out my blog at www.mattwaldmanrsp.com.